Respected chair of the session, Dr. Balagopal T.S. Prabhu, my respected teacher, Dr. P.V. Ramankutti, the great Rigvedic scholar, Dr. Ravindran Nambudiri, Dr. Shivagaran Nambudiri, Dr. Horekkad Krishnan Nambudiri, Sri Madhavan Nambudiri, K.K. Hariharan, distinguished scholars attending this online program in India and abroad, my friends, pranams to all. At the outset, I express my gratitude to Professor P.C. Murali Madhavan and others for giving me a chance to present a paper in this international seminar. I am directly entering to read my paper. Lineage of Indian medical tradition, a peep into the Samhitas, Vedic Samhitas. The term Veda is intrinsically used in the context of knowledge, whatever the type it may be. This statement is supported by the usage of words like Ayurveda and Natyaveda, the knowledge of medical science and the knowledge of dramaturgy, respectively. Even though in Indian context, the word Veda technically signified the four major Samhitas, which contained the portions of Karmakanda and Jnanakanda, the sacrificial and spiritual aspects, respectively. At an early age and later, it was uplifted to the position of the knowledge of both the four Samhita texts and the entire accessory literatures. Hence, the word began to signify all the Shastras, the science and humanities later. Thus, the word acquired a wider and expansive meaning and became known as the commonly accepted system of knowledge. The well-known reference, Vedatrayi, means, according to some interpreters, that Indian tradition excluded Atharvaveda from the group. Yaimniya Sutras 2.135 to 37 explains the word Trayi as three types of expressions. The Riks are in verse, Saman are in lyrics, and the remaining, that is the Yajus, are in prose. At the same time, one can notice traditional references which repeatedly establish the quadruplicity of the Vedas. These different opinions point to the idea that there had a time when Atharvaveda did not exist as a traditional knowledge system, and later, in the arena of Vedic literature, it, like the other Vedas, three, occupied an esteemed position. The general remark that Vedic literature provides valuable material towards the study of ancient Indian medical tradition has to be examined carefully. Though the traditional medical knowledge was not confined to any particular Samhita of any Veda, it is more reflected in the Samhitas of Rigveda and Atharvaveda, and they present a markedly rich variety of contents from philosophical speculations to medical references. One of the shakhas of Atharvaveda is named as Charana Vaidya, which leads to think that the medical practitioners of Vedic age were nomadic in character. Charana Vaidya means wandering medical practitioner. Maybe it may be checked for correction. References in Rigveda. There are several hymns and names of gods in Rigveda connected with the regaining of healthy life and mitigation of diseases. Gods like Indra, Rudra, and Asvins are credited with medical powers. One of the hymns found in the 10th mandala of Rigveda discusses the function of physicians. Yatra aushadhis samagmada rajanas samita viva viprassa uchyade vishak rakshohamiva chadana. He who hath store of herbs at hand, like kings aimed at a crowd of men, physician is that sage's name, finds slayer, chaser of disease. In the hymns 10.161, 1-5, Yaksma Nashana, the son of Prajapati is the Rishi, and Indra and Agni are the deities. The Rishi says to Indra and Agni to rescue and free the morbid from the possession of grasping demon. In 10.163, 1-6, Yaksma Nashana, cure of Yaksma or phthisis, is the deity. Here, removal of Yakshmas from the nostrils, eyes, ears, chin, head, brain, tongue, and all other parts of the body is explained. Again, 150, 11 to 13, 11 and 13 are requests to the Lord of God's Son, to the Lord God's Son to cure the inner and outer maladies by his rays. The Asvin gods are considered the heavenly physicians. Prayers are offered to them for medicines and good health. The story that they removed the decrepitude of sage Chavana and provided him youth, who has abandoned by his family members at old age, is given in the hymn 116:10. Jujurusho nasatyoda vavrim pramanjatandrapiriva tandraabimiva chavanad pradiradan jahidasya ayurdasrad ilpadir agrunadan hridinam. From you, the old Chavana, O Nasatyas, stripped as it were male, the skin upon his body, lengthened his life when all had left him helpless, the Sras, and made him lord of youthful maidens. Again, their surgical capabilities are described in the hymn 116:15. Charitram hiveriva apchedi varnam ajakhelasya paridaknyayam sadyo jankham ayasim vispalayai thanehite sartave pratyathattam. When in the time of night, in Kaila's battle, a leg was severed like a wild bird's pinion. Straight you gave Vispala a leg of iron that she might move what time the conflict opened. The Oshadi Sutta 1097 is in praise of the herbs. In 23 hymns, the sage explains the special features of them. The herbs were sprung up in the time of old, 3 ages earlier than the gods. Here the 3 ages refers to the 3 seasons, spring, rainy season, and autumn, according to YMC Narayanan Namboodiripad, the famous Malayalam commentator of Rigveda. The last mantra, that is the 23rd of the Sutta, is important in several aspects. Tvamuttamasyoshate tava vriksha upastaya upastirastu so asmagam yo asman abhidhasati. Most excellent of all are you, O plants, thy vessels are the trees. Let him be subject to our power, the man who seeks to injure us. Here the poet makes it clear that the unwanted cutting of trees should be prohibited. To the god Indra also, medical powers are attributed. The mantra 215:7 describes the power of Indra, who gave eyesight to Rishi Paravrak. Savidwan amagoham kaninam avirbhavan udatisthal Paravrak pradisronasthad vyanagajashta. Knowing the place wherein the maids were hiding, the outcast showed himself and stood before him. The cripple should erect, the blind beheld them. Rudra is another deity with medical powers. His medical potentials are discussed in several mantras. He is addressed as the best among physicians. Matva Rudra Chakrudhama Namobhirma Dushtudi Vrishabhamaduho Sahudi Unno Vira Arpaya Pheshajebhir Phishaktamam Twa Phishajam Sranomi. Let us not anger thee with worship, Rudra, ill praise, strong God, or mingled invocation. Do you with strengthening balms incite our heroes? I hear thee famed as best of all physicians. In other mantra, he is requested to remove all the ailments those affect the entire body. Tvadattevi Rudra Santamevi Sadam Hima Asiya Heshajevi Yasmadvesho Vidaram Vyamho Vyamivas Swavishuji. The most saving medicines which you givest, Rudra, may attain 100 winters. Far from us, banish enmity and hatred, and to all quarters, maladies and trouble. In this way, several instances can be seen in Rigveda Samhita. Then references in Atharvaveda. The Caraka Samhita says that the extant Samhitas of the Ayurveda are indebted to Atharvaveda. Chadurnamrit Sama Yajur Atharvavedanam Atmano Atharvavede Bhaktiradesya. Sushruta Samhita says that Ayurveda is the Ubanga of Atharvaveda. Ikhalu Ayurvedam Nama Ubangam Atharvavedasya. Kashyapa Samhita also agrees with the opinion of these two texts. Tasmad Ayurvedam Shrayati. From these references, it can be ascertained that the tradition of Ayurveda is descended from Atharvaveda. In Atharvaveda, the Prajapati appears in the capacity of a physician. In the hymn 435.1, he is said to cook such a rice mess by which death is avoided. Yamodanam prathamajardasya prajapati tapasa brahmane pachat yo lokana vidhritirna abhireshad tena udanena aditarani mrityum. The riceness of Prajapati, the firstborn of righteousness, cooked with fervor, tapas for Brahman, which separator of the worlds shall not harm. By that rice mess, let me overpass death. Further, he is requested to treat for long life eyesight. In the hymn 668.2, Adidismasru vapatvava undandu varchasa Chigilsadu Prajapadir Dirghayutvaya Chakshase. Let Aditi shave the beard, let the waters wet it with splendor, let Prajapati nurse it in order to length of life to sight. Atharvaveda refers to Indra as another ancient physician after Brahma and Prajapati. In several hymns, he is addressed as a physician with peculiar powers. He is described in 419.8 as the lord of plants and protector of the morbid. Satena ma patipahi sahasrena abhilaksha ma indraste virudham pataya ugra ojma nama dathat. Protect me around with 100, defend me around with 1,000. May the forceful Indra, O lord of the plants, assign force unto thee. It is obvious from the text that besides these two, gods like Sun and Agni also have medical powers. The germ-killing power of the rays of the sun is depicted in the hymn 5-6. Pulpurastal Surya Edi Vishwadrushto Adrushtaha Drishtamscha Dhan Adrushtamscha Sarvascha Pramranan Krimin. Up in the east goes the sun, seen of all, slayer of the unseen, slaying both those seen and unseen, and slaughtering all worms. In 606.3, God Agni is requested to prepare medicines. Agni Kranodu Bheshajam. He is called the destroyer of the demons of disease. Upapragal Devo Agni Rakshoha Mi Vajadana 128.1. In this way, Atharvaveda represents the profundity of medical knowledge. Hymns on Panchabhutas. Among the Panchabhutas, air and water have much medicinal quality. The Rigvedic hymn 10.186.1 is a request from the part of the devotee, the deity Vayu, to fill his hearts with health and joy and provide prolonged life. Vada avadu bheshajam sambhumayo bhuno hrade prana ayumshi tarishat. Rigveda 10.137.2 and 3 also are requests to Vayu for the removal of all sorts of ailments, both physical and mental. The next mantra in the words of Vayu is, the next mantra is the words of Vayu that I am with you, he says, Vayu says, I am with you, the devotees, with all sorts of protections. I provide you strength and auspiciousness. I appease your illness. The mantras are Dvavimau Vatau Vada Asindho Raparavada Dakshande Anya Avadu Paranyo Vadu Yadrava Avata Vahi Bheshajam Vivata Vahi Yadrava Tvam Hi Vishwa Bheshajo Devanam Duda Iyase Atvagamam Sada Santadibirado Arishtadadibhi Dakshande Padrama Bharisham Parayakshmam Suwami Te. Similarly, the medical and purification aspects of the water has been praised in the Rigveda Samhita at several places. For instance, 10.9.7 is a praise to waters to bring to protection all disease-dispelling medicaments for the good of the body of the worshipper, and that he may long behold the sun. Apa pranida bheshajam varudham tanve mama jyokcha suryandrishe. In 10.137.6 also, the curative capacity of water is explained. Aba idva ubheshaji rapo amiva chatani aba satvasya bheshaji staste krunundu bheshajam. Waters verily are medicinal. Waters are the dissipators of disease. Waters are the medicines for everything. May they act as medicine to you. These hymns remind one to keep in mind that both air and water also should be kept undisturbed for better health in this earth. Yes, I am going to conclude my paper. Conclusion. From these references, it can be assumed that in the Vedic period, the medical tradition consisted of a lot of physicians and an elaborate pharmacopoeia for treating diseases with drugs. But it is not possible to say anything intact regarding the beginning of Indian medical science. Caraka says that the science is eternal, and therefore the period of evolution of it cannot be calculated. Whatever may be the history, one can notice, as mentioned earlier, its basic structures in the Vedic Samhitas, especially in Rigveda and Atharvaveda. Both texts are the compendium of medicine and contained ample material connected with diseases and medical aids. Atharvaveda, in addition to the healing of diseases by drugs, represents the charm system of Ayurveda of the Vedic age, which is said to be affected by sins and transgressions of the previous births, which again has to be discussed in detail. I'm not going to detail such a portion in this paper. The Samhitas of Sutra and Kashyapa make it clear that the Ayurvedic material was in the form of a floating nature in the beginning and was not systematized. It is quite natural to believe that Vedic Samhitas became the channel through which this floating tradition has reached its earliest stage of systematization. All these discussions point to the unbroken continuity of ancient Indian medical tradition. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor, for presenting the very informative paper. Actually, as a Sahitya part, we are having the mantra Ava Undandu Jivase Irkhayutvaya Varchase. That way, some oath is there in Taittiriya Samhita that we are practicing. So, thank you for all this, your paper.